this is Sophie Wilson, and you are listening to the Slowboat Sailing Podcast.
Support the Slowboat Sailing Podcast on patreon.com/slowboatsailing. Hello, this is Linus. Greetings. So I'm really excited to bring you Tasha and Ryan from the Chase the Story YouTube channel, the Turf to Surf blog, and their SV Cheeky Monkey is the name of their awesome catamaran. So Tasha and Ryan, they have a pretty big boat, and they have typically had a lot of crew on their boat, and in many respects they're similar to SV Delos, that is a big boat with a lot of crew. They put out just awesome episodes on YouTube. If you haven't seen them yet, you will definitely want to check them out. I didn't go deep into their background, but they have a really interesting background. I wanted to focus on their trip to the Marquesas and the Galapagos in this episode and in the bonus episode. If you want to hear more about their story and their journey, Tasha was interviewed a few years back by Teddy J on the Sail Loot podcast, and that goes into how she and Ryan started sailing, how they started their business, and their cruise of the Eastern Caribbean in their previous boat, which was a monohull. And if my memory serves me right, that was episode 4 of the Sail Loot podcast. I believe Cheeky Monkey's a pretty much brand new boat that they got in Europe, and they sailed across the Atlantic through the Panama Canal, and we pretty much pick up on their story when they got to the Galapagos. So I have great news for you. If you're downloading this right when it comes out, as I hope you do, then you have a chance to get my third book, my newest book, Slowboat to Cuba, absolutely free in ebook form on the Amazon sites worldwide. So I'm making the book free for 2 days on November 21st, 2016 and November 22nd, 2016. Then on November 23rd, the price of the book is going to go up to 99 cents. On the November 24th, it'll go up to $1.99. On November 25th, it'll go up to $2.99, and it'll go up to $3.99 on November 26th, and on November 27th, it'll go up to $4.99, where we'll keep the price at through the holidays. So I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes, and definitely share that with your friends on social media or via email, so they can get the free book on Monday and Tuesday, November 21st and 22nd, 2016, or take advantage of the introductory low price this week. Slowboat to Cuba is the story of how I overcame family, bureaucratic, and weather obstacles to start the round-the-world voyage of my dreams and sail to the forbidden paradise of Cuba in the summer of 2016. It was one of those carpe diem moments. We have every reason to believe, based on the statements of the incoming Congress and President, that it's going to become a lot harder for Americans to go to Cuba come January 2017. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope the embargo is repealed, but I have little reason to believe that, and I certainly wouldn't bet on it. So if you're thinking about a trip to Cuba, do it now. Do it over Christmas. Do it before January 20th. So I didn't have any podcast listeners reach out to me about being a crew member for the South Pacific Passage to Hiva Oa in the Marquesas, but I got some great crew members already, and I am looking into doing that very soon, which means that I may not be able to put out a podcast in December or put out any more YouTube videos in December. I put out a YouTube video in our Round the World Vlog series, And we're up to episode 7 now. The latest is the second in Providencia, Colombia. We've completed all the videos in Cuba. So to give you an idea of the amount of detail in the vlog series versus the book, the vlog series probably lasts about 40 minutes. Book lasts about 3.5 hours to read. The audiobook version is only available to our patrons who pledge $3 or more on patreon.com. But you can get the book, the ebook, for free. And if you like paperback, that makes a great gift too. And that's going to be available on Amazon sites worldwide. So with the Round the World vlog series, we got 13 episodes planned and 7 out, so we're about halfway through. After episode 8 will be our last one in Providencia. We'll start talking about Panama, and you get to see the entrance to the Panama Canal, our Panama Canal trip, if you subscribe on YouTube. And I'm going to give away, we're getting closer to this goal of having 500 YouTube subscribers. We're in the 400s right now. And when we hit 500, one of those subscribers who sends me their U.S. address will get a free limited edition book, Slowboat to Cuba, in paperback, which retails at $19.99. But this is a special one. This is the first one ever printed. The proof copy, completely brand new, except for I'll probably sign it for the winner. So if you want to take advantage of that, subscribe on YouTube and also drop me a line on Facebook or on Twitter. Use personal messenger in either place and tell me your U.S. address and I'll put you in the drawing. If you've been watching the vlog series, we put the drawings at the end of the vlogs, and we've had a number of drawings based on a number of milestones. Those that have already given me their U.S. address to be in the drawing and already subscribed, I keep them in the drawing until they win, and so no need to contact me again. So I'm also excited that, between episode 28 and this episode 29, we hit our Patreon goal of $20 per episode. So thanks to everybody who's helped pay for the podcast and had access to all our great bonus episodes and also the audiobook of How to Sail Around the World Part-Time. Thanks to all our patrons who made that possible and have essentially given to all our listeners and everyone in the world a free copy of Slowboat to the Bahamas, which is a funny look at sailing in small boats and sailing off to the exotic foreign islands of the Bahamas. It's my hope to make that free on Christmas Day 2016. That is December 25th, 2016. I can't do that right away because of technicalities within Amazon. So I would encourage you, if you want to make sure that you get notice of the free day, to sign up for my free newsletter by going to slowboatsailing.com or go to our WordPress blog and sign in. But you can always do that at slowboatsailing.com whether you're a first-time visitor or a frequent visitor. There's a box up there. You put in your email address. It's totally free. I typically don't send out more than an email a week, but it's more likely that I'll send one once a month or once every couple months, and it's totally free to sign up. And, my newsletter subscribers already got access to free advance copies of Slowboat to Cuba, and one of the promises, I give away free books to my subscribers, and those newsletter subscribers will be informed about the free day, which I hope will be December 25th, 2016. So I've been busy getting the consumables for the engine. So one thing that you're always going to run out of when you're cruising is fuel filter elements and oil filter elements and O-rings and gaskets if you're doing a regular maintenance schedule on your engine. So you'll hear about a lot of guys that will replace their engine and they think that if they have a brand new engine it's going to work out great. But there are a lot of stories of people that buy a brand new engine for their sailboat and it doesn't work out great. And there's really no substitute for doing the regular maintenance on your engine. That's one of the things while cruising, why it's good to cruise part-time, because it's much easier to get those consumables back in Europe or Australia or New Zealand or the United States or Canada than it is in the islands. The other thing that I got was I didn't have the right nuts for my propeller. So I have a spare propeller, but if your propeller falls off, you're going to lose the nuts that are holding it on in addition to the... So if you read Slowboat to Cuba, you'll hear about how I did kind of some patchwork repairs on the Bimini in Cuba. But by the time we got to Ecuador, it was really falling apart. So I brought back the Bimini and I got a new one stitched here in Louisiana. And I don't live very near to sailmakers. There aren't any sailmakers in Lafayette, Louisiana. I don't live in New Orleans where we used to keep our boat. Now that we don't have our boat in New Orleans, I don't have a lot of call to go there. The only times I was really going to the New Orleans area was to take the captain's exam, and now that I'm done with that, one piece of news is that I got my captain's license upgraded to an OUPV 6-pack near coastal from inland, and I thought I would have to take a test for that, but I didn't. I just had to pay the fee and show my sea service, which was great because I didn't want to take any more tests. Perhaps it was because I had taken tests so recently. Anyway, so I got the upgrade license, and I don't really have that much call to go to New Orleans anymore with no boat in New Orleans, which is over 100 miles from my home, and it's pretty much a 3-hour drive each way, so that makes for a really long day in the car if you're going to do that in one day. Otherwise, you have to pay for a hotel. I have no place to stay in New Orleans. We actually were thinking of making a trip to New Orleans, but the weekend we looked at was so expensive, we just couldn't afford it. There's always a festival going on in New Orleans, and some of those are more popular than others, and the French Quarter is completely sold out. I tried to find places that would sew a Bimini closer to home, and I found that upholstery shops sew Biminis all the time. So if you're kind of looking into your Google Maps app, trying to figure out where can I get my Bimini made or repaired, you should try upholstery shops. So I think I got a really good price given the complexity of my Bimini, how much custom work they had to do at an upholstery shop, and I'm sure if I got quotes from a sailmaker it would have been much more. You can get as many quotes as you want from upholstery shops in the Lafayette area. There's probably about 10, maybe more. From my economics training, the more competitors there are, the lower the prices. So if there's only one sailmaker, 2 sailmakers in your area, price is going to be pretty high. If there are 50 upholstery shops, then you probably could get a pretty good deal. I'm pretty happy with that. Ideally, you're going to have the boat right there, but with a boat in Ecuador, there's really nothing I can do about it. They used the original as a pattern. I was hoping that they could restitch the old one, but they just thought it was too far gone, and it was a lot easier for them to make the new one if they used it as a pattern for the old one, so we just have a new one now. So, since we've hit our Patreon goal, it makes sense to set another goal. One thing that became clear to me over the summer and after I came back was I had to buy a lot more equipment for the podcast. I have to pay more for internet for the podcast. I had to upgrade my equipment, both for the podcast and also for the vlog series in terms of Wi-Fi equipment at home and also equipment, camera gear, so tripods, GoPro knockoffs, all that other stuff. Still have that website hosting that we're trying to pay for, the podcast hosting that we're trying to pay for. And, So we're setting an $80 goal. You'll find that's a lower goal than any other podcast that's on Patreon right now. I know a podcaster who is trying to outsource a lot of the tasks that he does, but he still is just working like a dog to put out the podcast and paying a lot of money to put out the podcast, and really to outsource this stuff at the cheapest of cheap rates using places like Fiverr and stuff like, or Upwork. It's still going to cost something like $300 an episode when he's getting some help. So one of the things I want to do with our next goal is to reward the patrons of the podcast. This goal, we rewarded everybody, every sailor in the world, not the patrons who are making it all possible. In this one, when we hit that goal, we're going to have a drawing to give our most loyal patrons the greatest chance of winning 2 weeks in a desirable location in the South Pacific, 2-week cruise in a private cabin on the Slowboat with me. So it's my hope the Slowboat is going to be in the Marquesas for almost all the summer of North American summer or Northern Hemisphere summer of 2017 if this trip goes well. And it would be wonderful if we could have a patron who flies out for 2 weeks and basically has a free captain charter in the most beautiful islands in the world. If you'd like to support just the podcast, you could just pledge as little as $1 a month. If you would like to support the vlog series and the podcast, pledge per episode. You'll only be charged for the Round the World vlog series, which are the highly edited episodes that I put on Slowboat Sailing YouTube channel about our round the world voyage. Or if you're only doing it once per month, the maximum you'll be charged is once that month. And it's my intention to put out the podcast once a month and the vlog series once a month. Check out the great rewards at Patreon/Slowboat Sailing. Of course, in December, the internet is not that fast. I got an Iridium Go, but it's not fast enough to upload a podcast in the middle of the ocean. And I'm told that the Iridium Go is probably about the speeds that you can expect. That is satellite internet speeds in the Marquesas. There's no fast internet anywhere in the Marquesas. And so Tasha and Ryan talk about the internet in the episode. So that's a great segue into the episode. Here we go. Thanks for listening to the Slowboat Sailing Podcast, and you'll love the interview with Tasha and Ryan.
Internet in French Polynesia is not very good.
Yeah, I was resigned to that I wouldn't get to talk to most people in French Polynesia until after the cyclone season started. So until they found their cyclone season home. Well, there's a lot of boats in French Polynesia right now. I think we're not as effective as you guys are to scoping out the great internet speeds. So
it's a top priority of mine always.
Yeah, as is mine. So you guys found that the airport was awesome.
Oh my god, the airport has the fastest Wi-Fi, and there's one hotel in town too that's got fast Wi-Fi.
Cool, but nothing really in the Marquesas.
Oh no, apparently all the islands up there are running off satellite. Their internet runs off satellite, and so like when it goes down, everybody's internet goes down, and that's pretty much like every other day.
Tahiti has internet, a wide internet from Hawaii, but they've not actually extended that yet to the outlying islands. But they're talking about doing that soon, so the islands will come online eventually. But at the moment, Tahiti has a speed of internet, or quality of internet that the outlying islands just don't have.
Yeah, I mean, if my understanding of satellite is it's like, so I'm an old guy, so I remember, like, when AOL was big. And, I think they have like 4,000 baud or something they were telling me that the Iridium stuff has. So I'm really shocked that anybody was able to upload a video with that in the Marquesas.
Well, we did actually upload a video when we were in Fakarava, one of the atolls, and it took 48 hours. The woman who runs the little house with internet, she let me plug in my computer and leave it open and running overnight at her house for 48 hours, and that's how long it took to upload a 16-minute video.
Okay. So I guess they everybody that has uploaded videos, they made it to Tahiti first.
No, actually, like La Vagabond, if you follow them, they were doing the same as we were. We've been behind them, so we keep meeting the same people that they've been using their internet at. You're like, oh, did it work? Fantastic. Can we upload a video? So we've sort of hit up the same context. In every island, there's always like one person who has internet, and it's never great, but if they'll let you leave your computer plugged in for several days, then it'll eventually do something.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, I've been watching La Vagabond since they left Panama, since they went to Panama. And
yeah,
I did see them like put it in like this hut and then pray for 2 days or something. So it sounds like your story.
We use that same hut, the semaphore in Hiva Oas. The woman who runs it is really lovely, and she tries to help as much as possible.
Okay, I guess you alluded to that. Maybe Ryan is the more technical guy about speeds, or at least he has a measuring device for it. What were the speeds there?
We just run a speed test. I have an app on my phone and a website, speedtest.net, and we just check the speeds of every location we go to.
So what was the speed in Hiva Oa?
0.03 megabits download and like 0.02 megabits upload.
Okay, 0.3 megabits. Okay.
0.03. That's like, it was the same in the Galapagos. Just that's like painfully slow.
Okay.
I can't stream without at least 0.8 or something, like close to 1 megabits download would allow me to maybe like buffer a video and watch it. But yeah, there's nothing in the Marquesas or in the Galapagos that's going to allow you to stream.
Yeah, I mean, like, how did it compare to, like, your Iridium Go or whatever? I assume you guys have some sort of satellite system on Cheeky Monkey.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Iridium Go is great, but it is really just for weather routing and for staying in contact by email and maybe sending the odd photo. But, video, that's not an option. There's no browsing.
Of course. But, I mean, like maybe
that.
Hiva Oa was faster than your Iridium Go?
Yes. Everything's faster than the Iridium Go. That's pretty much the lowest. It is a convenience because we can get all our weather grips out at sea, but it's not anything like a real internet connection.
Yeah, I mean, that you say that they have like satellite internet in the outlying islands. I'm just trying to understand what that means because, to me, like, for instance, when we visited Wardick Wells, right, that's all they have is satellite there. They didn't have any cell phone connections there. And that was really hard to just bring up an email, like a text-only email. So I would guess maybe Hiva Oa is kind of along the same lines.
I don't know. I don't know the technicals of how their internet works. I just know where it's good and where it's bad. And it's very bad in French Polynesia.
Okay. Of course, I think you guys have a wonderful channel. All my, Facebook friends have been raving about you guys for a long time when you were crossing the Atlantic. But I've been more interested since you guys came to Panama and in the video time. Of course, your Galapagos videos. Because of my plan, my boat is in Ecuador right now, so my plan is to go to Galapagos and Hiva Oa next summer, and then
great,
North American summer, and then haul out the boat in Hiva Oa. current plan. So we'll see how that goes.
You've already like scouted out the options in Hiva O with Vinson to get your boat hauled.
Basson.
Yeah, there's a yard there. I don't know if you visited.
Yeah,
I think it's the yard and marina.
It's not very large.
Yeah, it's like a yard and a marina, and so they do have long-term dry storage there. It was interesting.
They do have long-term dry storage. It's not so much a marina, though. There's not really a marina on Hiva Oa.
Yeah,
to anything
yeah.
You would consider a marina.
Yeah.
They probably have about 10, 15, maybe 15 boats for every cyclone season over there. And it's your best option in the Marquesas to get your boat hauled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. Yeah, somebody wrote a Noonside article like in August, and so I was sure that I had to go to Tahiti or maybe Atutaki or
Apataki, yeah.
Yeah, you would know the pronunciation better than I do.
How much do you draw on your boat?
4 feet.
Well, one of the options, I mean, the thing about Apataki over the Marquesas is that the Apataki is very dry.
Yeah.
And the Marquesas is much more humid and wet. So some people between Raiatea and Apataki and then Hiva Oa, they choose Apataki, and you can definitely do that with what your draft is, because it's the driest of the three options, and some people really appreciate that because you can leave your boat there for 6 months or so, and obviously the humidity does have some effect.
Oh, that's a good point. You know, I interviewed somebody who was crossing the Pacific, I think in 2011, 2012, and she was warning about Apataki because it's kind of a small operation and it was like closed down for a while. That people couldn't get their boats out.
We've had lots of very strong recommendations from cruisers who return to Apataki every year to put their boat up on the hard and then go back to the States or do what they do in the winter. And yeah, from what we hear, as of the way it functions now, it's run by a very nice family, and they actually do what a lot of boatyards say they'll do, but they don't do, which is go in and air out your boat and visit it every week to make sure they check it for moisture and stuff like that. So everyone here has raved about how great they take care of the boats there. So we're going to do the same for cyclone season and take the boat to Apataki.
Oh, okay. So you're going to go upwind back to Apataki.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. So, and how did you get a chance to look at it when you were up there?
At Apataki? No,
yeah.
We haven't been there yet.
Okay. All right. Do you mind if I ask you, like, what kind of rates do they have, or?
I don't know that offhand. I don't know. I mean, I could probably send you an email with some info later, but I don't know off the top of my head.
I guess you've gotten a lot of good recommendations for there.
Yeah, a lot of cruisers in this area who, like most of the cruisers that are here now in Tahiti are people who stick around French Polynesia long term. So we've met a lot of people who aren't moving on to New Zealand, and so they're putting their boat somewhere for cyclone season, and we've gotten all the recommendations from people who've used the different yards.
You've flown to Tahiti a few times. How did you find that? Was that, or at least once, is it pretty easy to get around the islands?
Yeah, it depends what island you're on, but there's a few islands that have flights regularly. There's some islands like Apataki, they only have one flight per week. But yeah, I had to go visit the doctor, so when we were out in Fakarava, luckily it was easy to hop over to the airport and then get down to Tahiti. Yeah, it was no trouble at all, and actually, like, there's a nice little hotel which is not that expensive, and so I just stayed there for 2 days while I hit the doctor and then came back.
I mean, one of the great things about Tahiti is, from most of our sailing, like, for example, like in the Caribbean or down the East Coast to America, it's often the case that there's a lot of civilization, so to speak, and then there's a few kind of like remote, beautiful anchorages. Where the South Pacific is the complete opposite. It is literally one beautiful remote anchorage after another, and you're actually going out looking, or you every now and then you come across one of the civilizations, so to speak, and Tahiti's that. So it's a real hub for for this part of the world. I mean, the next nearest, like so to speak, hub is about 1,000 miles away almost. So this is a real, like gravity, like people are drawn here.
Yeah, and every cruiser is a little different. Like some people really just like to stay out at the remote islands and they don't want to go to civilization. But I actually really love Papeete, and I've loved being here because there's running paths on the waterfront. There's a CrossFit box I can go to. I went to a Polynesian dance class last night, and there's lots of cruisers around. It has all the friendliness of the Polynesians in French Polynesia, and then it's also got stuff and stores and things, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I would say I probably do gravitate more towards civilization than the remote anchorages. But yeah, it's true, everybody is different. I think one good thing you bring up about anchoring is, one of the things is like the depths and kind of the anchoring gear that you need for places. I think, for instance, I think you had on your Facebook blog in Hiva-Oa, you had kind of everybody does a double anchor, the stern and
yeah, which is a pain. I hate any anchorage where I have to throw a stern anchor. I just want boats to swing, and I don't want to be fussing around with a stern anchor.
Maybe that was the time of the year that it was so crowded. It's such a small anchorage. Is that what is the reason for it?
No, basically the tide goes in and out there at such a leak that boats start swinging around.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we were there, it wasn't the busy time of year at all for that anchorage in Hiva-Oa. But without a second anchor out, boats will start moving, and even just with the rocks and stuff, you can start working your way over towards those. So it's one of those rare places where a second anchor is really essential.
Okay. Yeah, but I think there's probably not a lot of other places where they have out second anchors. Is that right?
No, we haven't seen any since then, and most of the places have been, have had very few boats, or we've been to quite a few spots that have had free mooring balls you can tie up to, and that's kind of nice.
Yeah, since we left France, so we're talking about, 25,000 nautical miles ago, we've only actually used a second anchor once. So it's definitely not a common thing. It was essentially in Hiva-Oa.
Where did you visit in the Marquesas?
We only went to Hiva-Oa, and then we went to Tawata, which is a really remote little island. And then after that, we headed over to Fakarava, which is in the Tuamotus.
But we also, when we came in, we went to...
Fatu Hiva was where we arrived. We actually went to Fatu Hiva before we went to Hiva-Oa.
And there's a lot of question marks about Fatu Hiva because it's actually windward of Hiva-Oa. So when you're crossing the Pacific, it's actually one of the first island you come to. But there's no option to check in there. So a lot of people bypass it and go straight over to Hiva-Oa because they feel that an obligation, which I understand, to check in first. But it's actually okay to stop in Fatu Hiva for as long as you want on the way past, and there's no problems with that. And if you don't stop there on the way past, the chance of you turning around and going back to windward to get there are pretty remote. I mean, it's uphill at that stage.
It's a pretty stunning place to arrive to as well.
Yeah, I think Le Vagabond did that in their video, but then I also had a guest in our episode 4, and she was like, well, we didn't, a lot of people stopped, but in the year that she was there, a lot of people were getting hassled for not checking in at Hiva-Oa first, so she was like, well, we went upwind. So yeah, that's kind of a debate in my mind. I guess it's good news that you guys didn't have any hassles with that, because obviously Fatu Hiva is a stop that I would like to make this summer.
Not only did we not have any hassles, but there was no one there who was even, talking about anyone getting any hassles, and definitely the island themselves, that it just wasn't a factor. So I would definitely stop there. At the end of the day, if someone gives you hassles, then you can go to Hiva-Oa and check in. That's not a major problem. But I would definitely recommend that people just stop there on the way past, because it wasn't a factor, and it is a beautiful, beautiful island. The people there are amazing.
Yeah.
All right, cool. It's a good recommendation. And how is the anchorage there? It's supposed to be gorgeous. Is it a rolly one though?
It's a little sketchy. You need to get to a good holding. Yeah.
Yeah, the holding's a factor more than any rolliness. It's very much just trying to get a grip on the ground to hang on, because there's a little bit of sand and gravel on either side of the anchorage, but in the middle it's just rock. So if you do try to hit down in the centre of the anchorage, then it'll take a few goes before you get some sort of holding on, in that area. But definitely on the sides there's a little bit better holding.
So are the anchorages mostly rocky, or is it just Fatuhiva?
No, most of them are just sand.
Also, don't forget we've got a catamaran, so rolling is not really something we suffer a lot from in anchorages.
Right.
Yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't phase much.
Yeah, that's a good topic. We should kind of, since you guys had a monohull and now you have a catamaran, maybe you could give the listeners a critique of a monohull versus a catamaran.
I don't know if it's so much a critique as much as I think we very much believe that there is a perfect boat for every purpose, and it really depends what you want to do and what it is you appreciate about boats that decides your preference and whether you go for a catamaran or a monohull. And I think with our monohull, monohulls generally run as a starter boat, much cheaper than buying a catamaran as a starter boat. And when we started with our old boat, we were very new to sailing, and we just wanted something cheap and easy to get up and running. So our monohull was perfect for that, and we took it all the way down to the Bahamas and the Caribbean, and that's when we really got a taste for wanting to go a bit bigger. And when we considered whether we'd upgrade to a bigger monohull or to go with a catamaran, I think it was more about, what is our life going to be like from this point forward? And it wasn't what we were doing before, which was weekend sailing or just sticking to the coast for cruising. We were planning on doing some remote ocean sailing and staying at anchor. So it was more about what's our life going to be like on this boat? And you really can't beat catamarans for the space. And we fell in love with the Fontaine Pajot Helia because in a 44-foot boat, it's also 24 feet wide, and it's really modern in its layout. So the galley is a real pleasure to cook in. It's on the same level as the cockpit. It's a pleasure to sail, and it's got so much room. We're very comfortable at anchor, and that was the big factor for us. Was really, it wasn't so much about sailing and its performance, though this boat does sail really well. It was more about what was our life at anchor going to be like.
So one point that I think you brought up was that rolling, you think it's got a better motion in a rolly anchorage than a monohull. Is that right?
Well, basically, we just don't roll in an anchorage, or a marina in that respect either. We're completely flat. So if being on a stable platform in an anchorage is good for you, and I don't know many people who actually would go against that, as such, so to speak, then definitely a cat like this is perfect.
Okay, so you think the motion is much better at anchor than a monohull?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other thing that people bring up about cats is that they have a different motion at sea. So they don't heel.
That's true.
But maybe I think somebody described it as they have a jerky motion, maybe, or kind of a random motion. It's harder
it really
to
depends
predict.
on what direction into the wind you're going. I mean, they don't love going upwind. Sailing downwind, though, is extremely pleasant. And as far as jerky motions, I'm not sure I'm familiar with that feeling.
Well, one of the things about the catamaran is with the two hulls, then each wave that comes through does produce some sort of motion, but it's very minimal. But you're getting hit by the same wave twice, whereas with a monohull, you're only getting hit by that wave once. So when a wave hits a monohull, it starts a motion to lean that then isn't really corrected until the next wave comes. Whereas with a catamaran, that single wave hits it twice.
So that second hit maybe surprises, especially somebody used to the motion of a monohull.
Yeah, I mean, I think the level of seasickness on a catamaran is probably a lot less than it is on a monohull.
Okay. All right. I think that's interesting. I'm agnostic on it. I own a monohull, but I can see the value of a catamaran. I tried to convince my wife to at least charter one, but she's resisted that. So.
I mean, I have no doubt in our future, beyond this boat and this trip, that we'll end up with another monohull again, because they're, if you're sticking close to port and, you're going out on the weekends or going on short trips, like, monohulls are just so much fun to sail, and you get that sensation of the healing, and, especially if you like racing, going out in a monohull to race in regattas is, it's fun. Monohulls are for that purpose, I think, and obviously people sail around the world in them too. We just wanted to have a little bit more comfort and space than we thought a monohull could give us.
Let's see. One of the things that has kind of puzzled me. So you mentioned in your email to me, the name of your blog is...
So, our different media. Basically, when we started sailing out of New York in 2012 on Hideaway, I started a blog which was called Turf to Surf, and that's still the blog that I write on in terms of sailing stories and stories about our journey around the world. And then it was a year ago when we bought the new boat that we started to dabble around and play with the idea of making videos. And we weren't really sure if we would want to. And we also didn't want it. Turf to Surf is really kind of the person behind it is me. And though Ryan is someone who shows up in the stories, it's not like he writes on that blog. So we didn't want to make a Turf to Surf video channel, which was just all me. We wanted to be able to, both collaborate on it and also bring other people in. And so, we created the YouTube channel Chase the Story a year ago now, when we got onto our brand new boat, picked it up in La Rochelle, and then started this journey that we're on now on Cheeky Monkey. So the both of them exist. One is a pure writing blog, and the other one is a YouTube channel with our video stories.
I did notice that you have a Turf to Surf YouTube channel too, but you didn't want to. You wanted to start a new one.
Yeah, that was something like when we were sailing on Hideaway, our little monohull, we had played around with some GoPro videos, but we didn't. I don't think we weren't really looking at doing video production, and certainly nothing like what we're doing now with the video blog. So that was really just a place to post little videos that we made during that time. But the primary purpose of Turf to Surf was a written blog.
Okay. Well, I think it's pretty brave to start anew. You've obviously done a great job of it, and people love it, and you guys make tremendous videos. The other thing that really interests me about your channel was that you have a lot of volunteer crew, and that's what I have a lot of volunteer crew too. At least I have had volunteer crew on my boat, especially for the offshore stuff. And so I wanted to talk to you about your crew, and you brought them up. You had Liam, Gemma, and Christy on the boat all the way to Hiva-Oa. Is that right?
Yeah, and we had another guy with us, Lance, who got on in Panama and sailed with us to the Galapagos, and then got out in the Galapagos. Okay,
so you had 4 volunteer crew members to the Galapagos. Is that it?
Yep, and then 3 of them came across the Pacific with us.
Okay, and you also had a volunteer crew in the Caribbean and the Atlantic Ocean and the Med?
Yeah, and they were really just friends of ours, and we put the feelers out when we were crossing the Atlantic to people, sailors who were friends of ours that might want to come along for the journey. So yeah, they hopped on for that ride. And Christy is the one crew member who was on the boat for the Atlantic, the Caribbean, and the Pacific.
Okay, so Christy's been on it the most.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and she was someone that Ryan and I met when we did the Clip Around the World race a few years ago. Chrissy was on another boat, and she was from an area near us in New York. So we met her the year the Clipper race started and stayed in touch with her and visited in the ports where she did the full round the world race, and we just did a couple legs. So yeah, she was really excited about doing the Atlantic on a cruising boat, since she'd done the Atlantic on we'd all done the Atlantic on a racing boat, but it's a very different experience.
And then Liam and Gemma, did they join, and Lance, did they join in Panama, or did they join in the Caribbean?
They got on in different spots. So we picked up Liam in Colombia. He was backpacking around Colombia at the time, so he came up to Cartagena when we were there. Gemma came from South Africa and got on board in Cartagena as well. And Lance was living and working in St. John, so he flew to Panama and got on the boat in Panama.
Okay. So it sounds like you've been very successful with your crew members. What do you look for in crew? How do you find good crew that stay on and are happy and do a good job?
The first time around, we just really wanted to go sailing with friends, and that was great. So we just invited people that we already knew from the sailing world, and and it was kind of important to us crossing the Atlantic that we had people who were fairly competent sailors, because we were also feeling a little bit nervous about crossing the Atlantic in our own boat for the first time. So it was great to have a crew of really seasoned sailors. The second time around, we had more of a creative endeavor with seeking out crews. So we really put out an ad, not so much looking for people who necessarily had sailing skills, because we were happy to handle the boat ourselves, but we felt it would be an advantage if they were sailors. But what we were really looking for was someone who could contribute to the creative project of Chase the Story. So like Christy, who is now a very seasoned videographer, she had a lot of video making responsibilities. Gemma came on board because we really liked some of the animated drawings that she had done, so she did a little bit of that in our videos. Liam he came on not so much as part of the creative project, although he did contribute by writing little blurbs for us and posting on social media. He was kind of like the mechanical guy. He was meant to keep all of our boat systems running, that kind of thing. And Lance was someone who wanted to get involved in the video making, and he had a lot of water sports experience, so we were looking forward to doing some windsurfing with him. And so yeah, we've kind of picked our crew based on personalities that we thought we would get along with and would get along with each other, and then also what they could contribute to the boat in terms of either keeping the boat running or the creative stuff that they were getting involved in.
So were all the crew members in the watch system or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a watch system the entire time.
So you kind of expected them to be in the watch system, and then you also expected them to contribute to the blogging and vlogging and.
Yeah, not so much blogging, but it was about the video making.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. It sounds kind of like more the Delos model, You guys.
Yeah,
I guess
they're very inspiring. We've been following them for a long time, and we really love, the vibe of being able to experience places with a group of like-minded people.
Well, I think the other thing is that, if you look at Brian Troutman, right, he kind of has a management background, and you guys obviously have a great management background, and so I think that I don't think every skipper would be as successful as you guys is managing such a diverse team and picking the right team. So.
Yeah, I think, I guess it's probably different for everyone. There are going to be people who want something. Yeah, I can't really speak to how people develop those skills, but when it's your own boat, obviously you care a lot more about what happens to it. And we've just learned over time. We were very relaxed in the beginning without so much of the rigid schedules. We kind of became more rigid with our schedules as time went on, because we found it took a lot of stress off of us and the crew, as in you just always knowing when and where you need to be, or what you need to do at specific times means that you can really truly relax in your off hours, as opposed to having just sort of a relaxed schedule of like, sometimes people cook now and, you know, sometimes, you know, you can cook if you want to. Then people get a little stressed out because they don't know when they're supposed to be on and when they're supposed to be off. It's nice to know when your off time is, and you don't need to be expected to clean or cook or, you know, be at the helm. So yeah, that was just something we adapted over time from the experience of being with crew.
All right, that was Tasha and Ryan of Chase the Story YouTube channel. You can also check out Tasha's blog at Turf to Surf. And among other things, we talk about the pet policies in French Polynesia and also touring the Galapagos and, you know, how they dealt with tours and crew. And, you know, there was just a wealth of information. If you're planning on cruising the Galapagos, you definitely want to hear that bonus episode. If you're planning on cruising the South Pacific with pets, you want to hear that bonus episode. I learned a lot. You know, one of the things that I learned was that it really was impossible for me to take daily on my dog on this leg of the voyage. While it's okay to sail with a pet, if the pet stays on your boat all the time in French Polynesia, if you are flying off of your boat, which Tasha and Ryan were when I interviewed them, it is a big deal, and you have to get a lot of things done in Papiti, Tahiti, which is a long ways from the Marquesas, right? If off the top of my head, I would guess it's about 800 nautical miles from the Marquesas. And Tasha and Ryan ended up having to go to Tahiti and then sail upwind back to the Tuamotus, which are further east of where Tahiti is, to where they eventually hauled out their boat for hurricane season. And, you know, they also talk about their future plans for future seasons, which I'm sure people who follow the Chase the Story YouTube channel like I do will be very interested in. So you can hear that bonus episode and all the bonus episodes going back to episode 10 with SV Delos by pledging just $1 on patreon.com. That will also get you my audiobook, How to Sail Around the World Part-Time, as an MP3 file in your personal RSS feed. And so when I update the bonus episode, you'll get that just like you get a podcast. And I've got a little blog on the patreon.com/Slowboat Sailing site to tell you how to do that and take advantage of it. I love it now that they've changed it. It's just so much easier than just streaming it on the Patreon site, but you can do that too. But you can only do that if you are a patron. There are a lot of posts on the patreon.com/Slowboat Sailing site that you can see if you're not a patron, but the bonus episodes, all of those are only visible to patrons of the podcast who have pledged at least $1. So I am super excited about our next guest, the crew of Resolute Set Sail. And, you know, if you've been following their YouTube vlog series, which is very popular, which is awesome, them sailing in Mexico, you might have thought that they were going to sail the South Pacific, but you'll be surprised by episode 30 to find out where they actually did sail. And the crew of Resolute Set Sail are true adventurers. You'll love that interview. I'll bring it to you probably in January, the way it's looking. And hopefully in January we'll also have out another episode in the Round the World Vlog series. So if you want to connect with Slowboat Sailing, check out facebook.com/Slowboat Sailing, where we'll be doing DeLorme updates. We'll also be doing DeLorme updates from the middle of the South Pacific Ocean on our Twitter site. So if you follow us on Twitter, which is twitter.com/Slowboat Sailing, or it's So we're at Slowboat Sailing on Twitter, /Slowboat Sailing. That's the Slowboat to the Bahamas page on Facebook. If you want to find us on YouTube, it's youtube.com/Slowboat Sailing. It's the Slowboat Sailing channel. Totally free to subscribe and see every episode as it comes out. And of course, if you are listening before November 23rd, 2016, snag a free copy of my latest book, Slowboat to Cuba. And if you're listening on the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, take advantage of the discounted low price before we go up to the $4.99 price, which we'll keep for the ebook version throughout the holidays. And it's possible on Amazon to not just gift the physical version, but you can also gift the ebook version very easily on Amazon.com if you're looking for a present for your favorite sailor. Happy holidays, and thank you for listening to the Slowboat Sailing Podcast. Go and have some fun on the water.
Hi, I'm Jana Wilson. Thank you for listening to the Slowboat Sailing Podcast. Subscribe to our free newsletter at slowboatsailing.com.